Hey, good afternoon. My name is Raymond. I'm here in London this Tuesday afternoon. I've just gotten off of taking my kids to their swim activity, which is great. I also have the good fortune of being able to take them to school in the morning. I know that there are many, many dads and sometimes even parents who don't even have the luxury of doing either one of those things. That is the beauty of being an online entrepreneur. That is also the beauty of being one's own boss. So I can't suggest, recommend, even advocate, profess, just, I can't speak highly enough of it, that it is something that, if it's something you really want to do, is that you take the opportunities, you seize them, and you make it happen. Because you know what, the one thing about life, and the one thing about kids in particular, is that those years, like time. I mean, once, just like that snap of the finger, that moment's gone. So those moments of life and those years of growth and those things of exploration, those discovery, and being there with them and holding hands and them sharing stories and excited and all those things that you know all about, those things are gone. And I know it's easy to say, but I was right where you were at one point in time. I live in London. I'm from the States. It wasn't always easy to kind of create and generate a livelihood here in the UK. Interestingly enough, there's we share a common language, but we're divided by culture. And like any big city or any big place or a new place, it takes time to settle in and get all that. So it took me a while. I used to be a teacher. That was actually really, really rewarding, really fun. And then I ended up doing some other teaching in some of the inner city schools, and that was really, really tough. I've been involved with a lot of international communities all throughout my life because I've lived and I was raised overseas in developing countries throughout my life. So that's not foreign to me. But even with that experience, it was challenging. It was challenging to every culture is different. Every type of, if you look at a culture, the personality of the culture is slightly different. In the States, it seems to be a bit maybe more gregarious, a bit more kind of outgoing. You can start up conversations very, very easily, and I'm not suggesting you can't have that in the UK. I'm just saying that to make kind of long-lasting friendships or long-lasting connections, it's just a cultural difference where things take a little bit more time, or they take a little bit more, not sizing you up or sizing you down, but checking you out, making sure that that it's a good fit. Sorry, forgive me. I'm looking in my rearview mirror and I'm parked. Like it really matters. But yeah, the key point here is that I've been where you've been. I made the transition to go from being a teacher. I went back and got my master's in my mid-30s. I was the oldest person in the class. I had a newborn at home. I had a 2-year-old as well. I was working full time. I know that's kind of self-inflicted. But the only self-inflicted bit was that I took on the studies. I guess maybe you could call the child as well was self-inflicted, but of course choice is, that's a self-infliction as well. But the point being is that I had to work, and I was looking to promote myself into a different way. And in order to do that, I had to up my skills to do something very, very, very different. It was extremely demanding. And then, to try and springboard that into something else, one in your mid-30s, to make that career change is, in any time it's not easy, but in particularly later on in life when you have a lot pulling on you than say when you're single, it was excruciating. I mean, I talk about sleepless nights. So I know what it's like to burn the candle at both ends of trying to juggle, being with family and then also try and provide for them and also provide for self so that you can have the wherewithal to create something. And then from there, I had an opportunity to co-found a renewable energy business back in Africa, where I grew up in my secondary school years. So I had a network and I had a familiarity with that culture, and that was really something special. Particularly the instilling clean green energy, but more so in helping to instill a project and an enterprise and a social enterprise that really worked to eradicate poverty, to tackle poverty head on, and by doing that was working within the clean energy field. I know there's a lot of controversy around things like biofuels and so forth and so on. But if you're working with a community that has, kind of biomass waste anyway, because there's most of them are to use the term, peasant farmers with really not a whole heck of a lot, and to the point of where clothing falling off their bodies. I mean, we're talking serious poverty. To get that going, and then to have that opportunity just completely just ripped away from you by a basically power and greed conflicts of where you have high power. I took it from basically just being a couple of people being so-called advisory kind of consultants and training up to a multi-million dollar business. And when you get into those kind of big zero numbers, interesting people start to show up, because there's wow, here's something interesting. And when they say, well, we're going to put money up, then they also seem to think that they have more privilege than others, and it can get quite nasty. And unfortunately, it blew the thing apart, particularly the partnership. So that was a particularly nasty experience that I wouldn't recommend on anybody, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it on my worst enemy. Unfortunately, it seems that I had a worst enemy, because I lost everything. I came back from Africa effectively with nothing. So I had to rebuild again. So, you just adapt to these things. And so, and rather than get, it was tough. It was a challenging experience. I mean, it hurt. It hit hard. It hit low. It cut to the bone. We were almost literally destitute. My family, I had a family to provide for. I mean, we almost lost our house. I'd lost my livelihood, and it really challenged the family to the point where I almost lost the family, only because we were just, we just weren't connecting very well. So, a big, huge experience and some very formative years of my children's lives. So not great stuff. Certainly not what I wanted to give them, but, hopefully what they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So in doing that, to say up front, I know what it's like to struggle, to be really pushed to the limit, to really, be challenged, to really have to dig deep inside and come up with some, to tap into your resourcefulness and to identify and to one's core strengths and as well as weaknesses, and then to shift mindset around how you do things. And one thing about building wealth, or to build prosperity and to do that, is most people that I've ever spoken to, or I've ever read about, or I've heard from, or I've kind of followed or looked to as an example, or examples of how to shift gears and make things work again, is most of them will say that they worked and they were able to do so as a result of a fantastic group of people around them. They were able to delegate, or they were able to connect with like-minded people. They were able to identify where they had their shortcomings, and others were able to step into those roles that they weren't, rather than trying to do it all themselves. And that's the standard. I mean, I've known so many people, and I've worked for them myself, who are, their own business owners, their own bosses, their own workers, and occasionally they'll take on extra hands to help and so on. They try to run it all, including the paper trail, and they just get absolutely swamped, bogged down, and to the point of threatening their businesses and their livelihoods themselves. And then they've taken themselves out of the game completely, just like some of these not-for-profit and charity organizations who really have these issues around money and all this stuff. Oh, you'll be a big sellout. Yet if you take money out of the equation, they no longer are able to do any of the things that they've set out their mission to do. And so you're of no good to anybody, including yourself. It seems like a really kind of an interesting dilemma, but that's a discussion about money and about richness and wealth that comes in another entry here. But my point here is that sometimes, I don't want to say you have to, I mean, this is a belief system. I mean, sometimes people think you have to kind of earn your stripes to kind of get, the luxuries of life, and I don't necessarily believe that. However, because of limiting beliefs, that sometimes happens and then fulfills that stuff, and it looks like that. I believe that I believe we all deserve a good life. I believe we all, everybody says, well, I grew up in the ghetto, therefore I couldn't do it. I mean, there have been studies where they've put, two very, very capable people in the same environment, and one has failed miserably and the other's excelled and propelled them into fantastic standards of living, only because, not to say that money is the measure, but the point is that they just, it was like, is the glass half empty or half full? They were eternally optimistic, and that is effectively what entrepreneurs are. I don't always see the opportunity. That's part of my growth and discovery. That's part of life. Is that it's I'm constantly personally developing. People around me whom are far more successful, who in fact you could say could afford not to have to do any of that. They do that constantly. Why? Because they're always trying to improve themselves, improve their game. They've got to manage it effectively. I mean, how many times have we heard the lottery ticket winner who basically just runs into complete ruin and destitution because they didn't know how to handle it? So, life. Every time, every situation, you have not a new set of challenges, but I mean, as things change, things morph, new scenarios present themselves, and if you don't have the capacity with which to take it on, or the experience of how to adapt, or gel, or chuck and jive and move around, it can be tougher than it really needs to be, and that's kind of the key point here. Is that when the opportunity to actually not that the opportunity presents itself, but when you are, wanting to actually engage in the life that you've always wanted to have, and you've been putting it off and putting it off and putting it off and putting it off for whatever the reasons are, either you don't deserve it, or you have success issues, or there's self-sabotage, or you just can't see it because you're not, you just don't have, you're just too blinkered. Or you've been beaten down, or you've heard all the things, it'll never happen, so why bother? Or money grows on trees. I mean, whatever one's previous information and inputs are, is to say, cut away all that stuff. I know it's easy to say, but if you set an intention and to decide and take action to say, hey, wait a minute, I know it's possible. I know that I can do it. It's simple. It may not be easy, but it's simple. And if you overcomplicate things and overanalyze things and all that kind of stuff, that can complicate things, and it can put you dead in the water and stop you dead in your tracks. And that's the key point, is if you just start out step by step, effectively tapping into your why. Tap into why you want to do something, and the how will follow. And you really connect with what it is and your passion and your purpose, and you do all the things that are necessary with which to kind of give that direction and follow it up with focus and committed action and be disciplined and committed to it and really, 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 really go for it. You will get it. And so, to come full circle around, I would love to be able to share stories of that kind of engagement and empowerment with the people who are out there, and the rest of you are out there, the rest of the parents and the fathers and so forth and so on, who are now stuck into a 9 to 5 or a 8 to 10 grind, who hardly ever get to see their families. The best years and the best times of the days of their lives, of their children, their families, or wanting to have families or meet people, or whatever it is that you want to do in life, or seize the opportunity that you maybe didn't have, or it was because of other things that got in the way. That's exactly my point. Don't let others knock you about. Go build your own dreams, because you know what? If you're not careful, someone else is going to tack up onto you and get you to build theirs. So on that note, I'll leave you with that. Have a jolly, fantastic, great day, as they say in the UK, and we will see you on the next one. Cheers, guys.